close the door? Hello, everyone. I'd request you all to please settle down. We're just getting started since we're already delayed by a few minutes. Right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. It's my pleasure to welcome you all today to the case study and panel discussion on the India AI Mission's application development initiatives. Um, as you all know, we've come together to the summit to discuss the transformative potential of artificial intelligence in addressing some of the most critical challenges facing our communities, our country, and the globe. Sorry. We'll have the overview of the India AI mission now, the slide. To just convey the vision of the India AI mission to you, I'd like to tell you that it aims to develop, scale, and promote the adoption of impactful AI solutions across critical sectors. The mission is built on several key pillars, including providing access to modern hyperscale AI compute infrastructure, developing indigenous large multimodal models, and streamlining the access to quality data sets. Could we have the slide? Yes, thank you. So as you can see, there are 7 pillars of the India mission, and all of the sessions today are divided in between these 7 different pillars. This session in particular, the session on real-world AI solutions, is on the India AI applications development initiatives, which, as I've already told you, is all about developing, scaling, and promoting the adoption of impactful AI solutions within government machinery or for social impact. Next slide, please. The objective of the IADI initiative is focusing on supporting the development, scaling, and promotion of AI solutions by addressing problem statements sourced from various governmental institutions. The initiative aims to catalyze socio-economic transformation through AI-driven solutions. As for our objectives, our goal is to make AI for India by harnessing high-quality datasets and indigenous models, and we do this by providing strategic funding and guidance to solution developers. We also seek to build a repository of AI solutions to reduce the duplication of efforts and resources and strive to develop a citizen-centric model for AI solutions with the potential for social transformation. In conclusion, I'd like to say that the India AI mission and the IADA initiative represent a significant step towards harnessing AI for the greater good, and I look forward to the insightful discussions and valuable contributions from our esteemed panelists today. Thank you all for being here, and having said that, I'd like to invite everybody on to this dais, all our panelists and case study presenters and our keynote presenters. Thank you. Slide change. Thanks, everyone. I'd like to request everyone for a group photo together. I'd request you to please stand up. Thank you. Just, yes, yes, yes. Thank you, everyone. To start things off, I'd like to invite Shri Jayesh Ranjan, Special Chief Secretary, IT and ENC of the Government of Telangana. Shri Ranjan is the Special Chief Secretary of the Industries and Commerce and Information Technology Departments of the Telangana government. His assignment involves developing policy frameworks, attracting new investments, identifying opportunities for utilizing IT in various government processes, and promoting the digital empowerment of its citizens. His last few assignments have been in the industrial promotion sector as Commissioner and Managing Director of the Industries Department, in the Tourism Promotion Department, and the Vice Chairman of the Hyderabad Urban Development Authority. I invite Shri Jayesh Ranjan to please deliver his keynote address. A round of applause, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Where is the timer? You told me that I have to speak for 8 minutes. So if there's no timer, I presume that I can go on and on. So greetings to everyone. Greetings, Sanket ji, fellow panelists, distinguished members of the audience. In preparation for this conference, we did a count yesterday of how many AI use cases we have deployed in Telangana by the government in the last 4 years from 2020 till now. And we were able to list out 52 use cases. So even if none of them were here, I could have easily taken 90 minutes to tell you about all those 52 cases. But I won't tell you about any of those. What I would do instead is to tell why is it that we have been able to roll out 52 cases while there are other states, other governments, some of whom are still developing familiarity about AI. So I would like to explain what is so foundational about Telangana. And possibly I'll mention 1 or 2 use cases in passing, but not more than that. So our journey began in 2020. In fact, the year 2020 was celebrated as the year of AI in Telangana. See, many of you will recall 2020 was a very challenging year. There was pandemic, lockouts, and everything was haywire. But despite facing all those challenges, we decided to go ahead with this very important decision that 2020 will be the year of AI in Telangana. And to prepare for that year of AI, towards the end of 2019, we again did something very important, very milestone, which was to bring out an AI framework. So we just saw the 7 pillars of the IndiaAI mission. Our framework is also quite similar. The only thing is that our framework came out in 2019, and IndiaAI mission, as we know, was announced last year. So our framework also provides for how do you make data available to people, large volumes of data. So we have started an open data portal and government data, humongous amounts of data, which is held by different government agencies, that is made freely available. We have also tied up to provide high performing compute facilities, particularly to startups. We have started skilling programs in our colleges, etc. In fact, I can share this with you. In those days, I also used to be the officiating vice chancellor of a state university. The state university in Hyderabad is called JNTU, Jawaharlal Nehru Technology University. And possibly even before the IITs thought about it, we took a very important decision. Our decision was that regardless of which branch of engineering, the university also offers management courses, also teaches pharma. Hyderabad, as you would know, is a very important life sciences center. But the decision that we took was that whatever branch of course that you are studying in the university, you have to mandatorily do a course in AI. And this is not just to kind of a formality kind of thing. You have to attend classes, you have to show attendance, you have to pass exams. And of course, if you like what you have learned, you can do more advanced courses. But everyone has to do a basic foundational course. And thereafter, we have done many more skilling programs also. So skill development is important. Innovation, we have NASSCOM representatives are here. Sangeeta Garu is here. Along with NASSCOM, we have set up a very interesting innovation program, which is called RevUp. And again, in the last 3 years, through different cohorts, more than 150 startups have been supported. Many of them have received multiple rounds of funding. Their valuations have gone up. But more than valuations and funding, the kind of products and solutions that they have introduced is something which we feel very proud, we feel very satisfied with. Some very amazing and cool and very impactful solutions have come. We are also equally conscious as a responsibility of the government to promote AI with full element of responsibility, ethics, transparency. We are partnering with other global bodies also to create a template or a framework on how do you deploy AI, how do you actually measure whether a deployment is meeting all the norms of transparency and ethics and responsibility, etc. And that is happening in the state. But more than anything else, we have also taken upon ourselves that we will walk the talk. It is very easy to bring out frameworks and announce and publish it in glossy books and all, but what is the action that is happening on the ground? So in that, as I mentioned a while ago, our track record is stellar. In the last 4 years, we have been able to roll out 52 solutions, AI for social good, for public service delivery, involving 14 government departments. Some of them are very important. And in fact, as I said, as we were preparing, my colleague Ramadevi is also here, who leads this initiative. We were preparing for this event. We came across a news item which was published yesterday only in a local newspaper in Hyderabad. Some months ago, we started a very interesting project. I'm not sure if it is happening anywhere else in our country, but the problem is there throughout the country. This is the problem of drug menace. There are large number of young people who fall prey to drugs. In fact, it is estimated that in Telangana alone, there are 2.9 million drug users, and many of them are very young, and obviously they waste their lives. If you become a drug addict, I mean, the life is just nothing but hell for you. So we have developed a AI-enabled screening application. It is called Mitra, and if the parents or the teachers get some sense about that child, about the youth rather, then they have to fill a 39-point survey, and then AI algorithm takes over. The survey tells what is the probability of that particular young person eventually becoming a full-blown addict, and what kind of interventions can be planned for him. And I learned about it from this newspaper report only, that 536 young people have been identified as potentially prone to addiction, and interventions have happened. And of course, these are early days, but if the interventions succeed, at least 536 lives so far, that is. Of course, in future, the numbers will go on, but 536 lives we would be able to save because of this particular intervention. And there are many such use cases also, which have created very strong social impact, but this is something very new. It was reported in the papers for the first time yesterday. The initial results are very encouraging, and I thought I would like to share this. As I said, there are 50 plus other such use cases also, and you are most welcome to look up our website, where many of these use cases have been explained, the methodology has been explained, the implementing agency has been explained. What other very important thing to explain about is, see, as I said, we created our framework in 2019. Many other states have emulated. National government has set up this mission. This is very true in typically many other domains in our country. Good projects are announced. Intent is very laudable, but very little action happens on the ground. And if you really dive deep, why is it that there is a big gap between intent and action? One other reason which is pointed out is that no one takes accountability for delivering that particular, for that particular aspect. No one is held responsible. So, because no institutions are created. I mean, you can point to me and tell that you are the principal secretary of IT in Telangana government, you are held accountable. So I agree, I mean, technically I'm accountable, but I'm accountable for 200 other things also. And even if I'm passionate about AI, I can't spend 24/7 of my time just working on AI. So what we have done, again, way back in 2019, is to set up a separate institution, an independent institution, to implement AI framework. And this institution is called TAIM, Telangana Artificial Intelligence Mission. And like various other institutions, so Ramadevi represents Telangana government on that mission. Mr. Praveen from NASSCOM is a partner on behalf of NASSCOM for that mission. But we bring lots of domain experts, private companies, academic institutions, startup representatives to govern this particular institution, the TM. And the TM, of course, vets each and every activity that we plan to implement. It offers suggestions, it offers guidance. We have been able to run some very successful hackathons in the last 4 years, large-scale hackathons in which thousands of participants have contributed their ideas. We have selected some very good solutions. One of the hackathon outcome is to create a solution which takes care of poaching. All of us know that poaching is a very heinous crime. Innocent animals are slaughtered just to extract something of value from their bodies, and it's a very big crime which is happening out there. And we have been able to develop a very useful and tested solution, AI-based solution, which does image recognition. And the trials have happened in a couple of wildlife reserves in Telangana, and the results are amazing. So there are many such important initiatives which have happened as an outcome of TM's programs of these hackathons, etc. The 52 solutions which we have onboarded so far, the use cases which have been onboarded so far, are largely taken from young entrepreneurs, young innovators, startups, some of them homegrown, but some of them from other parts of the country, other parts of the world also. We have a very standard template on how do you do these kind of procurement. See, many governments I know are serious about implementing AI solutions, but how do you procure this solution becomes a big problem. So we have figured this out. There's a good template, and as I said, the very fact that we have been able to roll out 50 of them, 52 of them to be precise, in the last 4 years shows that there is a tested way of procuring. And of course, if it is a homegrown startup, a startup which is in Hyderabad, which is located in Hyderabad, has its development team in Hyderabad, we give them a direct business opportunity. So if you're a homegrown startup and if you have a solution which is of relevance to the government, I'll procure it bilaterally from you. There is no bidding at all. You don't have to outcompete someone by lowering your price or anything. So I noticed that all the people who have been invited to speak, no one is from Hyderabad. So if you want really to enter a government kind of business, get a work order from the government, try to take it from the Telangana government, which potentially can open more doors for you. You just have to localize yourself. Some of you possibly are in Bangalore. People otherwise also are fleeing Bangalore. So it won't be difficult if you choose to move your office to Hyderabad. We'll give you multiple ways of assistance in other ways also. But more than anything else, we'll give you your first work order, which possibly without any process, there's no bids, there's no competition. You just come and take this work order, implement your solution, and then hopefully it will open many more doors elsewhere. So even though there is no timer, my body clock tells me that I have spoken for 8 minutes, which was allotted to me. So thank you very much, and good wishes for the rest of the session.
Thank you, sir, for that keynote address. I now invite Shri Sanket Bhondve, who's the Joint Secretary at the Ministry of IT and Electronics, to please come and deliver his keynote address. I'll just introduce you, sir. Sanket, sir, belongs to the Indian Administrative Services batch of 2007 and started his career as a civil servant belonging to the MP cadre. Among his tenure as SDM in Korai, Sagar, and CEO in Jila Panchayat Sioni, Deputy Secretary, Ministry of Road Transport and Highways, Government of India. On seeing his work as Deputy Secretary in the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways, Honorable Minister of Road Transport and Highways, Shri Nitin Gadkari, elevated and appointed him as his private secretary from 2019 to 2023. He's presently working as the Joint Secretary at METI and is dealing with the Digital Governance Division and is also the Designated Officer, Section 69A. He has vast experience and has contributed extensively for the welfare of poor and needy with compassion and personal involvement. We invite the Joint Secretary to come and deliver his keynote address. Thank you.
Actually, I thought I'm the host, so why introduction? That's why I started walking. Anyway, thank you, Bhavya. So, good afternoon, all. Good afternoon, respectable dais, colleagues, officers, all stakeholders, friends. So, we know that the GPI summit is going on. So, this is all but about the digital India. We have now the mission, India AI mission statement worth 11,000 crore of policy where India will be cruising ahead with many of these aspects. Myself as Joint Secretary Digital Governance, I am looking after all the e-governance projects running across the mostly the center. I am working with MEA, with the e-passports, with PMO, with MHA, Intelligent Transportation System, Fisherman Credit Card, whatever. All ministries I am working. So that's a fantastic experience. And let me tell you, basically, we're also coming up with an India Decade note where digital governance is again a very important part. It's basically a new name of e-governance. And as Jayesh, NIC, NIXI, NEGD, MyGov, there is where I bridge them all. So I feel that along with that, but today, AI is such an important part. It's incomplete if I miss out AI. As Jayesh Ranjan sir said, no doubt Telangana have done a fantastic work. We always appreciate that. And last month we had a national UI UX workshop where sir couldn't come, but the work done by Telangana, and they also got felicitation from secretary for the one of the best work done in UI UX and the other platforms. So coming back to AI, again I will tell you that I am connected to this sector in some other way. What Bhavya told. Section 69A IT Act. So I am the designated authority in India where I have the court powers to pull down, block your harmful content, apps, Twitter and all that content, whatever harmful is there. It may be the tweets, it may be the account, the channel. So that is where the first time I came in contact with all this deep fake and harmful content. So that is something different thing where I thought I should be there in the responsible AI group. So I requested Abhishek sir कि मुझे वहाँ पे डालो मैं वहाँ बोलूँगा. But he said, no, you are here and as a part of this, the solutions, the applications, you also be here and obviously be there. Anyway, section 69A is very different. Like, let me tell you little, those who must be interested, like anything which goes against the public order, national interests, foreign affairs, security, so we have the powers to bring it down. Many things are going, I will not mention, but there are like 36 categories of harmful content. Now you can just check. So there are community guidelines of these intermediaries, significant social intermediaries like Meta, Twitter and all, and we deal with them daily. So coming back to AI, let me tell you some of the best examples internationally also which we were studying. Like Saudi Arabia now have come up with a robust and aggressive AI policy. Basically those countries in Gulf who are dependent on the petroleum industry, they are coming up with AI and technology, and even UAE, Dubai, they have a minister for AI. So these countries are coming up, and I think India are also going ahead. My experience with these applications in AI, I will say, which is the topic given for the public service delivery is like, let me tell you, when I was private secretary to Minister Nitin Gadkari ji, in NHI, there was a bridge accident in Bihar. So many of the things came up, why these accidents are happening recurrently. So then we got one solution, and this was one of the solution with the census-based AI system with some algorithms and some data sets, which we were quite successful in implementing in some pilot phases in NHAI over some bridges across some big rivers of the northern like Ganga, Brahmaputra and all. So this was the first instance where really I saw that AI really can make a change in the infrastructure sector, and obviously where the loss of lives and property is there. Again, let me tell you about e-Sanjeevani in the health sector. e-Sanjeevani is a magnificent platform where you get a virtual assistance of diagnosis by the doctors and the experts, and you can just go. And this happened in G20. In G20 in Bangalore, one of a foreign minister was not well. She had fever. I will not take the name. And our then secretary, Alkesh Sharma sir, was there. And then he said, why don't you try e-Sanjeevani? So the African minister went there, and she was standing, and then she got a diagnostic, and she said, "Wow, what is this?" She got a slip. So like the UPI, like the German minister was impressed with the UPI, this was one more case I always mention. So it's obviously the AI applications, and I think, yes, we all should now come together that AI for all. We should ensure that there should be no duplicacy. How perfectly we can go ahead with a very trusted, secure, private way where responsible AI should go ahead. 2 days back, as Joint Secretary PFMS, I work with finance, so there is a public fund management system. Almost 2/3 of the Indian budget is in PFMS, something 27 million lakh, no, sorry, 27 lakh crores. So now, even in PFMS, with the help of AI algorithms and the help of NIC, we are able to rectify, correct, prevent, due to the algorithms and AI, how best we can help these financial data sets to give us more efficiency, more transparency. For example, my basic 100 rupees which comes from government to my salary to anything comes from PFMS. I think Jayesh, Ranjan sir knows this, and those officers sitting here, employees, they must be knowing that we are using it. It's one of the, I will say, the premier DPIs. So like DigiLocker, Umang, GEM, FastTag, PFMS is also one of the best DPIs, which are basically the components and infrastructure, the digital public infrastructure, and the 7 pillars what we were talking, where the AI will lead. Anyway, I will not take too much time because there are our colleagues and learned friends who will be speaking here. It is a proud moment to be here and interacting with you all. I am here, and I think the challenges also needs to be seen. I was thinking about एक वो controversy चल रही है कि AI आएगा तो job चले जाएंगे. So in my previous ministry, there was a report like India is short of 1 crore drivers, heavy vehicle drivers, operators, JCB and all. So now we have to think that if after AI comes with that assisted driving and driverless and all, what about this unemployment? So we have to balance it out. We have to see that in country like India, where like labor is there and we have the skill, unskilled, highly skilled, semi-skilled, all these categories. So how AI can fit and balance it all? Because we should see that these are the two wheels of a cart and the two wheels should go together. We can't imbalance it. Same about the other things. Yes, I'm also the OSD to DPDP. So I'm the officer in charge for the data protection board, which is coming after the digital protection bill. So in that also now DPDP coming and a lot of concern coming up with the data sets and all. I think we are working on the rules and all, but I think many things to come. There are some challenges, and I am sure that we will definitely cover up. Anything in the audience you like to interact with me, most welcome. I again thank all of you for coming here, and let's continue. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that address to the Joint Secretary. I would now request Shri Sanket to please felicitate Shri Jayesh Ranjan with a token of our appreciation. Yes. And I would now request Ms. Surbhi Agarwal to please felicitate Shri Sanket with a token of our appreciation. Thank you. Thank you both to the Joint Secretary and to Shri Jayesh Ranjan for their time, and we look forward to having you over again. With that, we will kick off the case study section of this session. First up, we will have Dr. Alpan Raval, who's the Chief ML Scientist at Vadvani AI, with a case study presentation on the TB care cascade from Vadvani AI. And just for the audience's information, each presenter will have 10 minutes to present their case studies, and post which we will move into a moderated panel discussion. So I would now invite Dr. Alpan Raval to please present. So
Thank you for the invitation and good afternoon. I hope people are not too sleepy. So this is the case study section of this session, and I'm going to present a few case studies, a couple of case studies on the work that we are doing for TB. But before I do that, just a quick introduction to my institute and what we do. We are a not-for-profit AI institute. Our aim is to build AI solutions for social impact at scale in India. And we work very closely with the central government in identifying relevant problems to solve across various domains. We work in healthcare, agriculture, and education currently. So we work with the government in identifying the problems, identifying relevant data sets, solving the problems, and then deploying preferably within existing government programs and existing government platforms. By doing that, we can achieve scale and we can impact the bottom 95% of the pyramid, which is what we target. So we're not interested really in AI for the top 5%. Sorry to say, we're not interested in AI for people sitting in this room, but we're really interested in doing AI for underserved communities across the country. So with that context, just a brief introduction to TB and the TB care cascade. TB is probably one of the oldest infectious but curable diseases. Right? The cure for TB was found more than 100 years ago, and yet many patients die of TB today across the world, and particularly in India. And the reason for that is manifold. There are gaps at various stages of the TB care cascade. So first, there are gaps in identifying patients who have TB. So someone may have symptoms but not get tested appropriately. So catching the right patients. Once you catch the right patients, then diagnosing them accurately is the next set of place where patients sort of drop out of the system. Once you've diagnosed them accurately, they need to start treatment, and that requires further counseling. So you see another drop off there. Once they start treatment, you have to make sure they complete treatment, because TB is like, in some ways, it's like HIV, where if you don't, if you miss even 10% of your doses, then you can get drug-resistant TB, which is much, much harder to treat and often results in mortality, right? So the patient has to do that, follow their treatment regularly, complete treatment. And then there is a good chance that they get cured. But because of all these challenges on the way, there are various gaps at which patients drop out of the system, and that leads to TB cases and TB mortalities. So we are working in various ways along this TB care cascade where AI can address some of these gaps. And those are represented in this slide by sort of these solutions in purple. So we are working on vulnerability mapping, where we identify locations across the country where you're likely to find a large yield of TB patients, but which are missed by the current program, right? So this is using a combination of data in NICSHI, using satellite maps, and so on. I'm not going to go into it in detail. Then we are working on cuff-based screening for TB, which I'll talk about briefly. We are also working on X-ray-based screening, how AI can interpret X-rays. And we, like many other organizations, are working on this as well. We work on prediction of adverse outcomes at the time of treatment initiation. So when a patient starts treatment, we predict using predictive models whether the patient is likely to complete treatment or likely to suffer from an adverse outcome over the course of treatment in advance, right? And if TB health workers on the ground know this in advance, then they can take interventions accordingly. So this is very useful information for them to have. And we've also worked on automated interpretation of the line probe assay for diagnosis of drug-resistant TB. And this is using computer vision AI. So we're working on all these various problems across the TB care cascade, and we continue to discover more problems. We are the official AI partner of the Central TB Division and supported by a USAID grant to do this. This is pretty much same information presented in different form. as I mentioned earlier, active case finding, screening for TB, diagnosis of drug-resistant TB, and then predicting loss to follow-up, meaning dropping off medication and predicting mortality. So the first solution, the first case study that I'd like to briefly talk about is prediction of adverse TB outcomes. This is a fairly standard risk prediction model, except that it's built on extremely diverse data, and it's also corrected for various types of biases. So this is a huge problem. The number of TB patients who reported adverse outcomes across the country was about 7% of all TB patients. This is a large number. This is over 1 lakh patients. And the idea is for the AI to identify these patients in advance. The day they start treatment, the model takes as input various features or various data points associated with the patient. This includes their history of comorbidities, their medical history, their age, their gender, where they live, location, and so on. And using all of these different variables, the AI predicts whether the patient is likely to complete treatment or is the patient likely to die in the course of treatment. And it does this at high accuracy relative to anything that exists today. I'll talk about the accuracy in the next slide. And this is currently deployed across 10 states in India. It's being prepared for integration into the Nikshay platform so that every single patient who is entered into Nikshay gets a risk score for these outcomes, right? And this is supposed to happen by December 2024. But we are already integrated in 10 states through a separate app. And the app provides to the TB health worker a prioritized list of high-risk patients. And so they can follow up with these patients. They can target these patients for counseling and for intensive interventions. This is a model that was trained, if you're familiar with the concept of training AI models, this is a model that was trained on about 10 million patient records from Nikshay between 2019 and 2023. It's a very, very diverse data set, pan-India data set, and essentially the model predicts a risk score. We have a certain targeting threshold, so we assume that the health workers can follow up with a certain proportion of patients. In this case, it's mentioned as 25%, but it can be varied depending on the resources available at each location. And based on that targeting threshold, the health worker then follows up with the high-risk patients. In terms of the performance of the model, we compared it to various rules that are used in order to identify these high-risk patients across the country. There is no standard set of rules, but we took rules that are used from different parts of the country. And as you see, at 25% targeting, the AI model has the highest sensitivity compared to any other rule-based model, and significantly higher than anything else. So this is the impact that we've achieved so far in our deployments in 10 states. About 1 lakh patients have been enrolled in the app, in the portal corresponding to the app. And because of data issues, data completeness issues, and so on, 74,000 or 73% of them have been assigned a risk status, of which 25,000 were assigned as high risk by the AI. And about 39,000 were tracked till the final outcome. And it was found that 2,800, roughly 2,900 of them actually had adverse outcomes, and the AI identified 60% of those in advance. So the AI actually flagged about 1,600 of these patients in advance and saved 1,600 lives by flagging in advance. We've also shown using, we've done limited trials where we've shown in areas where you deploy the model versus areas where you don't deploy the model, the number of adverse outcomes are significantly different in those areas. And the differences depend on location. The second case study I want to talk about very quickly, I know I'm running out of time here, is work that is in progress. It's partially deployed, but we continue to improve this. Is a simple way to screen for TB, not diagnose, but to screen for TB using solicited cough sounds from patients. So a patient doesn't need to be naturally coughing. They just need to simulate a cough in the vicinity of a mobile phone. They wear a mask. The mobile phone is near the patient, and they simulate 3 cough sounds. These are solicited cough sounds. In addition, the AI takes as input some self-reported symptoms from the patient. This includes things like, have you lost weight recently? Are you running a fever? And so on. Very standard questions that are asked of TB patients. What the AI does is it puts all of this data together, the self-reported symptoms. It analyzes the cough sound pattern as well, puts all this together and comes up with a TB risk. Does the patient have TB or not? If the AI, since it's meant to be a screening test, if the AI says that you're likely to have TB, then the patient needs to go for a confirmatory test, which could be positive or negative. If the AI says you don't have TB, you don't need to go for a confirmatory test with high accuracy. So that's the idea behind the screening test. The reason we came up with this, because there are already screening solutions that exist in the field. The simplest screening solutions is something called a symptom-based screening, where the health worker on the ground just asks patients for symptoms. And that's a screening test that also works. The other more sophisticated screening test is chest X-rays, where the patient gets an X-ray. The reason we work on this is that we think that this will fulfill a need in between the accuracy of the symptom-based screening and the accuracy of the X-ray-based screening. So the aim is to identify many more patients than you can with symptom-based screening, yet you don't need the sophisticated equipment of an X-ray machine in the field, right? So the idea is just with a mobile phone, you can record cough sounds. The same mobile phone app that is used to record symptoms can be used, right? That's the idea. It's currently deployed in health and wellness centers across 5 states and in high-risk community settings in 4 states. It's still a limited pilot type of deployment. It's very easy to use. The protocol is not difficult. It's non-invasive. Health worker doesn't need any special training, unlike X-rays. No cost. It's point of care, and the model is offline. It doesn't, the model doesn't need an internet connection on the phone. So it can work in rural areas, in remote areas, and so on. And you get the result in 3 to 5 seconds. This is some data that was used for training the model. I don't want to go into the details here, but essentially, we took the help of the Central TB Division. They were very kind to us, and we got data from 16,000 individuals across TB facilities across the country, including TB health workers. So we were very fortunate to get this data. We don't have much data from the community as such, and that's really the gap right now that we are trying to address. I already spoke about this. This is the type of input that goes into the AI. It's a combination of cough recordings and self-reported symptoms. And there's also one more AI model which detects if something is a genuine cough sound in the first place. So you don't want to fool the model by having non-cough sounds. So we have a very highly accurate cough detector in place. In TB health facility settings, the performance is very good. We get a sensitivity of 90% at a specificity of around 70%, which is sort of the standard benchmark for a screening solution. In community settings, currently the sensitivity and specificity are lower, which is the work in progress part. These are some deployment statistics. We've screened about 1 lakh people so far. 13,000 of them found presumptive, meaning needing a confirmatory test. 5,000 of those have been tested. And of these, about 290 cases have been diagnosed. You should keep in mind that TB is a very, very low prevalence disease. And the interesting part here is that 16% of these cases were only diagnosed by AI. They would not have been caught using standard symptom-based screening. And that's the gap that we want to keep increasing by improving AI models. So this is a pictorial representation of the same thing. Of all confirmed TB cases that we've caught so far with this model, about 300 of them, 80% were detected both by the AI and the symptom-based screening. 12% were only detected by AI but not by the symptom-based screening. 2% were detected by symptom-based screening but not by AI. And then 7% were detected by neither, right? So it's that 12% number that we're trying to increase, and we've monitored this increased yield between AI and symptom-based screening across time in our deployments. That's the graph you see here, and that's been fairly stable between 16 and 12% is the additional yield that the AI gives you. And what we think is that with more data and improving this model further, we can make this graph we can significantly improve the AI yield. So I think I'll just quickly talk about, you already saw the successes. I don't want to talk about successes too much. We've been very fortunate to work with data at scale, thanks to the government of India. There are many challenges to working with AI, some of which I can discuss during the panel discussion, so I don't want to take more time right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Alpan Rawal, for that presentation. Next up, we have Ms. Amrita Mahale, who's Head of Product at Arman. A round of applause, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Amrita Mahale. I lead product and innovation at Arman. Arman is a nonprofit that works in maternal and child health with a focus on preventive care. A woman dies in childbirth in India every 20 minutes, and for every woman who dies, 20 more suffer lifelong ailments. And 2 children under the age of 5 die every minute, and 40% of Indian children don't realize their full potential due to malnutrition, wasting, and stunting. And a large number of these deaths and disabilities are preventable, and hence our focus on preventive care. Arman runs multiple large-scale technology-based programs to target maternal and child mortality and morbidity, and our programs fall into one of 2 buckets. One, programs that empower women with preventive care information through pregnancy and infancy, and the idea there is to encourage health-seeking behavior. And 2, programs that train and support health workers to provide better quality of care with a focus on timely detection and better management of high-risk conditions. Our programs have reached over 50 million women to date and over 500,000 health workers. 2 of our largest programs are programs that we run in partnership with the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. These are Kilkari and Mobile Academy. We also have a high-risk pregnancy management program that's live statewide in Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, and very recently has also been rolled out to 2 districts in Uttar Pradesh. But the program I'm going to talk about today is our flagship program called M-Mitra, which we launched a little over a decade ago. So M-Mitra sends weekly or bi-weekly pre-recorded calls to women through pregnancy and infancy. We enroll women starting the 4th month of pregnancy, and the weekly calls continue till the child turns 1. So this is a total of 141 messages, and the program has reached over 2 million women to date. The preventive care messages we cover range from the importance of antenatal and postnatal care, nutrition, family planning, immunization, child health. And we conducted an RCT a few years ago. We saw that the M-Mitra program resulted in a 30% increase in the number of infants who tripled their birth weight at the end of first year, and a similar increase in women who complete at least 4 antenatal checkups. But like M-Health programs around the world, M-Mitra also faces the challenge of dwindling user engagement and over time and increasing dropouts. So consider the fact that this program is actually 1.5 years long. So it's very easy for the woman to stop listening at some point in the middle, but we want her to be exposed to the entire message pack, because the information is targeted and state specific, so the information continues to be relevant to her till the child turns 1. We have a small call center from which we can make service calls to beneficiaries to figure out, what is the reason they're not listening. So we offer to change the language in which they receive calls, we can change the phone number on which they receive calls, we can change the time slot in which they receive calls. But as we are a non-profit, we can only make a small number of calls every week, and M-Mitra often has up to 100,000 beneficiaries at a time. So the problem can be stated like this. We have a large number of beneficiaries from which we need to choose a small number, K, for a live intervention every week. The intervention here is a live service call. And the overall objective is to maximize the number of calls that get listened to. What we initially thought was, let's start with the women who've recently become inactive. And that number was always greater than the total number of calls we could make, but at least it was a start. And initially we saw good results. But often what happens is that the call itself may not change the beneficiary state. And sometimes beneficiaries would reactivate on their own or stop listening on their own. And at any given time, the number of beneficiaries at risk of deactivation also always appeared larger than the number of calls we could make. So here we worked with Google Research to use multi-arm bandits to build this solution. We worked with Milind Tambe and Aparna Taneja to build this solution. And what we did was we basically modeled each beneficiary as having two states, a good state where she was listening to the calls and a bad state where she was not listening to calls. And the state could change from week to week. And there were two actions, two interventions that were available on a weekly basis, which was to either do nothing or to make a service call. And there's always a transition matrix for every beneficiary where her state can change from good to bad or vice versa, or bad to good or vice versa, based on whether we make the intervention or not. So here's the overall process we followed. We started with data collection. So because this was a program in which we were enrolling beneficiaries ourselves, we could actually collect rich demographic details about each beneficiary. We collected education, income, phone ownership, the number of pregnancies the woman has had. And we realized that a woman's probability of listening, not listening, responding to the service call actually depended on these demographic characteristics. In addition to this, because this was an IVR-based service, we also collected data around how many attempts it took to reach a woman, whether she answered the call or not, and how many seconds of the message she listened to. So all of this was used to build the model, and we picked K beneficiaries every week over a long period of time, and then we went into an RCT. So this RCT was led by my colleague Neha Mariwala. We conducted the RCT with about 23,000 beneficiaries, which were divided into 3 groups. The control group received the same baseline standard of care. Then there was an AI group which received interventions selected by the restless multi-arm bandit model. And we also had a sequential round-robin approach where we would just go sequentially and make regular calls to women a certain time period after they enrolled. And every week for each of the arms, we had 225 interventions. And we measured how many more health messages were listened to by the 2 intervention arms compared to the control arm. And we saw that the AI group actually reduced drop-offs by 32% compared to the baseline over a period of about 2 months. We've now deployed this program, the solution Saheli, in the M-Mitra program. It's been live for a little over 2 years. It served over 3 lakh beneficiaries to date. We've prevented 30% drop-offs. And for the bottom quartile of listeners, the exposure to this essential critical preventive care information has more than doubled. And now we are also conducting a health study to link improved listenership to actual improved health behaviors and outcomes. So this was our M-Mitra program. We are also now working on multiple AI projects across our programs. So Kilkari, which is the national program for which Arman is the implementation partner, is very similar to M-Mitra, except that we don't do the enrollment ourselves. The enrollment happens through health workers on the ground when a woman registers her pregnancy. But this means that we don't have demographic information about these women. All we have is their listenership patterns. So we are using a very similar approach to what we did for M-Mitra with 2 key differences. One, there's no demographic information, and 2, there's no call center, because this program reaches 35 lakh women currently and has reached over 50 million women to date. And the intervention is not a call center because this is a national program. Here we ask the ASHA worker to intervene with a small number of beneficiaries. And this is truly a resource-constrained problem because ASHA workers are already overworked. So we need to identify the beneficiaries who will benefit the most from the intervention and allocate those to the ASHA. For the same program, we are also running a pilot to identify the best time slot to call a beneficiary to maximize the chances of her picking up the call and engaging with the service. This is also in partnership with Google Research. We are also working on a few LLM-based projects in our programs and services that have a WhatsApp component. So to conclude, I want to share some broad principles that we use across our AI projects. One being, start with the problem and not with the technology. So we pick problems that are rooted in real user needs. We follow an evidence-based iterative approach where we have the objectives of each phase of research very clear right at the beginning. And we start with small studies and pilots before deploying at scale. Collaboration is key to deploying AI solutions for social impact. We don't have in-house AI expertise, so we work with external collaborators. But what we bring to the collaboration is expertise in programs, product, design, and research, and a deep understanding of the field and the users. All of our AI work goes through an ethics review. We are very committed to responsible AI. And our work is also rooted in equity. So we make sure that we follow inclusive design principles and think about equity at scale. We also care deeply about data privacy and security, given that we work with multiple collaborators. We make sure that no information that's personally identifiable is shared with any collaborators. So at Arman, we are trying to build an innovation process that's human-centered, data-driven, and evidence-based. We don't want to use AI or deploy AI solutions as an end in itself. We use AI to make our programs more engaging, more effective, and that's a way for us to serve millions of women and children better. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for that presentation. So far we've... Hello? Hello? Yeah. Thank you so much, Ms. Mahale, for that presentation. So far we've had 2 presentations in healthcare across TB and maternal and child health. Now, for our last presentation, we move to education, which is being delivered by Mr. Vishal Sunil, who is the Chief Technology Officer at Rocket Learning. Just for the speaker's information, if you didn't notice, we have somebody in the front keeping time to...
Perfect.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I think they've spoken a lot, and the principles that they've spoken about are true even for us, right? I think that, we're talking about real-world AI solutions, so let's talk about the real world really quickly. So what Rocket Learning is doing is that we're an edtech nonprofit. We're trying to close the learning gap for 75 million underserved preschool and primary children across India so that they can have the future that many of us or many of the underserved population missed out on, right? So let's set up the context and opportunity, which is that India has the largest daycare system in the world, right? These are known as Anganwadi centers run by the Ministry of Women and Child Development. There are roughly 2 a village and 14 lakh centers serving 4 crore or 40 million children across India, right? This is great. This means that we've taken huge strides in terms of nutrition and other health benefits, right? This is how the wonderful centers look like in our villages today. It's an iconic center of every village that we go to. What we found is that education in the Anganwadi system has actually not been a big priority, right? With NEP coming in, National Education Policy coming in, there's a renewed light and focus on educations in Anganwadi centers. However, the system, there are a few gaps that we need to address, right? Anganwadi workers, lack the skill and training and maybe the confidence to be a teacher. Overall education dissemination in the Anganwadi center is quite low, with about 15 minutes of instructional time on average, right? But however, there's a big stark divide, right? 90% of your brain development happens by the time you're 5, right? What does this mean? This means that a high-quality structured ECE, which is early childhood education, intervention, is crucial for overcoming socioeconomic barriers because your cognitive development is not something you can catch up later on in life, right? And so prioritizing ECE in an efficient way is really key to societal progress and, the mission at 2047 that we all talk about, right? Another great thing in India is that smartphones are now nearly ubiquitous, and this provides a big opportunity for technology to transform education for all children, right? So that's the context. So let me talk to you a little bit about our vision and our mission, right? Which is that we want every child to feel supported. Nobody here is born alone in the world, right? We're all born with family around us, teachers, caregivers, right? What we want to do is to make sure that these same people in low-income communities feel supported such that they are able to make their children, help their children become school ready and life ready, right? So we want to leverage technology to support the nurturing adults in our life to do this, right? So how do we do that, right? So we take a three-pronged approach. I know, complicated problems require complicated solutions, and so we often take a three-pronged approach, which is your mother is often the first teacher in your life, right? All of our lives, our mother is the first teacher in our life, right? So how can we enable her and the people around you, people around the child, to engage and be a part of their cognitive development? So we have a parental engagement model, which is supposed to be a high engagement, tech-based model that can serve parents across India. We also have a teacher empowerment framework where we use the same principles of our high engagement technology base, but to help teachers, Anganwadi workers in this case, become teachers in their everyday lives and use knowledge in practice, right? And finally, we support the system through advocacy, policy, or project management, right? So let's just see a little bit on how it works for parents. So overall, we form like digital classrooms on WhatsApp where we have one teacher and 10 to 50 parents in this group, right? Over there, we send 2-minute bite-sized activities that teach you how to do a particular activity at home. Requires no material. It could be as simple as finding all the round objects around you or sorting things by size, right? So all of these videos have a call to action at the end of it, right, on these WhatsApp groups. And the way that you get credit for what you've done is to share a video or an image of what you've done back on the group, right? So this encourages people to send it back and get encouragement from teachers. The main thing here is that it causes peer effects, right? So usually when you're in an app or a chatbot, you're one-on-one, right? So there's nobody keeping you accountable. Social accountability is super key to long-term engagement, right? So we try to build that in our technology and in our principles. But finally, maybe the teacher is busy, maybe just your neighbors, can't be responding to you every day, right? So what we've then built is a platform that is able to nudge you and keep you in the high engagement brackets through behavioral nudges, social rewards, and incentives, right? Love to have played this video for you, but the summary of this is that we've collected over 130 million responses from our parents in about 2 lakh groups so far. So I would say we've been quite successful at creating high engagement education groups so far, right? What this also comes from is about 9 states that we work in, 100 districts, 2.2 million children, and the impact lies in that, compared to 40% in control, 70% of children are now able to recognize letters and describe pictures, and the engaged children reach the top 30% of their class, right? So that's something that we're really excited about. We're also trying to pull together the policy and the advocacy. I think the government has also recognized the need for ECE, so we've been able to unlock a 1,300 crore budget for retraining these Anganwadi workers as teachers, and also the Poshan Bhi Padhai Bhi, which is the first time that we're not just focusing on Poshan or nutrition, but including education in the Anganwadi space, so that every single child can get early childhood education. We also helped launch the first national curriculum for ECCE, and sort of the framework, which is Adarsh Dana Chetna. Do check it out sometimes. But now to jump ahead to AI, right? So we have all this data, we have all these parents, we have all these groups, right? So how do we use AI in an effective manner, right? I think somebody alluded to it before, but it's human-centric approach to AI, right? So we know that this is the impact journey that all of our users go through, right? They go through coverage, which is first getting the group, joining the group, onboarding, right? Through activation, engagement, retention, finally to mindset change, where they feel confident to be the teachers, and to learning and learning outcome, right? So what excites us is that AI can help us reach this depth at scale, right? So we're at big scale, but we need the depth, right, that maybe a teacher next to you can provide, right? So that's what AI can help us do by personalized learning, getting instant feedback, learning feedback to our children, and we're really excited to build this, and we've been lucky enough to be awarded for AI by Google.org for AI for Global Goals for 1.5 million grant, which has helped us come together, put together a universe of AI, which we think is key to helping nurturing adults and children move along the impact journey, right? The first milestone of which is how do we provide qualitative analytics, right, and as automatic assessments to our children, right? So all this time we count worksheets or we give marks or those things. Those are all quantitative, right? So how do we give them back personalized feedback on how they're doing, maybe what they can improve in a way that is nurturing, right? That's something that we're looking to solve. I'll talk to you more about these milestones coming up. Milestone 2 is to create a fully automated program that runs and maximizes your engagement, similar to the multi-arm banded problem that was mentioned before, right, for our cohort of 3 million children in 2025. And thirdly is to use LLMs and generative AI to actually, as somebody said in the earlier panel, India has 100 languages that are spoken by millions of people, right? So how do we then get this to scale fast across a context like India, right? So I think that's something that we really want to do with a high level of personalization. So the first thing that we built is actually automatic homework sheet grading, which is that, a child can annotate the worksheet like you see below, right? They annotate the worksheet and we're able to draw bounding boxes on it and tell you which particularly they got right and wrong, right? So you don't have to be in an application, you don't have to be on any app, right? Or you don't have to have any special software. You just annotate on WhatsApp or draw on your home, send us a photo back, we assess it and give it back to you, right? This is something that we've been able to do by building from the community as well. We actually, with a panelist here, Karya, we've been able to build and collect data ethically from the low-income communities, remunerate them for that, and create it such that 100 distinct worksheet types across 3 languages are all assessed automatically with an area of interest specific pattern, right? So we've been able to get 90% accuracy and processing over 50,000 images a day in this, right? So we've deployed it at scale. The second is, the multi-arm bandit approach that we're talking about, which is reinforced learning, which is that how do we, each parent, each one of us might be motivated by different things, right? And might be motivated at different things at different times. So how do we keep this moving? How do we keep the program fresh? How do you make sure that the 3 years they're able to engage continuously, right? So what we found is that by doing ABs and these sort of things, right, we've been able to find different strategies for us to excite our user base, right? And sort of, for example, goal settings or self-comparison and so on, right? I'll go into the AI model very quickly. I'm a little bit short on time. But the third and final one that I'm really excited to talk to you about is, how do you do generative AI to transform content creation, right? We all need content that's personal and specific to us, right? You can generate illustration, do translation. I won't talk about that so much. What we recently ran as a pilot with Anganwadis, where we found that they were able to give us prompts, and we were able to generate stories for their classroom based on their children, right? And we're running a study on it now to find out the impact, but initial qualitative things are like, this is amazing, because if you were in the classroom and you heard your name in a rhyme, that makes you instantly more engaged and more likely to do it, right? So this is something that is really transformative in how we're doing it, right? Very quickly at a 2-minute level on sort of what we're using to do all of this, right? We're using a couple of algorithms called Pix2Seek and ResNet, which is binary classification, and Pix2Seek is more like the LLM of image processing. So, it predicts the next pixel, whether the pixel is right or wrong, right? So all of these approaches, I just wanted to quickly touch upon and say that, they've had pros and cons. ResNet or YOLO sort of have better response times and can be scaled faster, right? But Pix2Seek is more accurate, right? So what we find is that there's always a trade-off in these things, right? So, and secondly, on sort of how we do the nudge personalization, this looks really complicated, but I'll try to break it down, right? Which is that there are 2 strategies, right? First is you find a automatically clustered group of individuals and say that you're all similar in this way, that you like goal setting, right? And this allows us to greatly enhance generalization, computational accuracy, and scalability. The second part of it is something called Thompson sampling, which sort of solves the exploration and exploitation problem, which is that, if we just pick a good strategy and keep going at it, somebody will get bored, right? So right now what we do is we try to split it up as, an algorithm that about 10% of the time or 20% of the time tries something new, right, to the same user. By trying something new, it learns something more, so that the next year, it's even better, right? And finally, just with the LLM use case, how we're able to have Anganwadi workers request their own stories and rhymes, is to sort of have a set of tools, a set of LLMs, as everybody's been saying, everything specializes at something, right? To have them, audio LLMs or story generation, to have that, and to have our content bank as our key context, right? Have some vocabulary and bounding conditions, and for it to only use our content bank to generate something we call Rocket LLM, and then finally expose that to a user. But yeah, thank you so much for your time. Very short, very quick. But I'd love to speak to you all a little later in more depth.
Thank you so much for that. I'd request everyone to please be seated as we now move on to a more engaging part of this session. We now move on to the moderated panel discussion, which will be moderated by Ms. Surbhi Agarwal, who's an editor of technology, an editor technology at Economic Times. Ms. Shrujana Merugu, who is a principal scientist at Amazon. We will also have Dr. Vivek Raghavan, who is the co-founder of Sarvam AI. We will have Mr. Manu Chopra, who is the CEO of Karya. We'll have Mr. Priya Nagpurkar, who is the vice president of Cloud and the AI platform at IBM Research. And in addition to that, last but not the least, we'll have Ms. Aditi Namdeo, who's the director of strategic initiatives at JPAL. Thank you for staying with us, everybody, so far. Over to you, Ms. Surbhi.
Thank you, Bhavya. A very good evening to all of you. I'm Surbhi Agarwal. I'm editor technology of Economic Times. I don't have to say much. We've had speakers like Mr. Jayesh, Ranjan setting the stage. We've had these 3 great presentations. But before I move to the moderated panel discussion, I have a quick round of questions for the audience. Who can tell me which is the most valuable company in the world? Very quickly. Yes, please. All right. What is the LLM by OpenAI? Sorry, loudly please. All right. Who's used Gemini here? Hands up. All right. Meta AI? Great. Claude? Fine. Who can name 3 apps of AI? Sorry? Only one person can name? Okay, 2 people can name apps of AI. Sorry, we are in an AI conference. You guys have been listening to AI since morning and only 2 hands up for AI apps. I just did this exercise to set the context for this session. While NVIDIA, ChatGPT, Gemini, Google, everybody is getting all the buzz around AI. But AI apps are really the ones which are going to lead the next generation, next phase of AI development in the world, right? I think one of the panelists here said that what they're doing is really for the masses, not for the 5%. AI right now, in a way, is very elitist, right? But the next phase of its development is something that will touch all of us, right? Every app on your phone right now is going to become an AI app if it is not already. So with that context, I'm going to start this discussion. We'll try to make it as engaging as possible. If anybody has any questions, feel free to raise hands. Please, let's make it a free-flowing conversation. Let's make it fun. I'll start with Srijana. You've done a lot of work at Amazon on AI, right? We are talking about apps. We are talking about AI at scale. What are the best practices that we can sort of take from you?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Surbhi, and thanks to Meiti and Bhavya for the invitations. Like, really nice to be here with you all today. And let me just begin with saying that, I was super inspired listening to the AI case studies. And one thing that struck me, and like you called Surbhi, is that machine learning and AI touches our lives in a lot of ways, right? And it's not really just AI. It's really the coming together of multiple different things. Over the last few decades, you've seen these huge advances in data management, internet computing technologies, platforms, hardware, and they've all come together to create an amplifying effect. And that has brought about this massive transformation that we are seeing now. Now, coming back to your question, Surbhi, if you just look at these verticals, e-commerce and healthcare, education, there are a lot of commonalities there. If you just think about it, right? See, all of them involve producers of various commodities and services and consumers of those commodities and services, right? And what we really wish to do is make these transactions very efficient and minimize risk. That's what we are trying to do. And so you can obviously see that given these parallels, there are going to be problems which are common. In fact, like I was smiling away when people were talking about band-aids, right? Because that's what we do elsewhere. We look at recommendation systems, forecasting, reputation assessment. It's common to all of these verticals, and there's just a little tweak needed to transition something that works in one domain to another. And you would notice that a lot of models and algorithms that are developed in the corporate sector make their way to social sector and vice versa. Now, having said that, I would like to step back and comment on a few aspects I wish that are so prevalent in the corporate world and we could take to the social sector. And I would call them maybe the 3 Ps. The first one is platforms. See, we are all so enamored by AI, right? It sounds so cool. But I feel that, hiding under our noses is this very powerful abstraction, which is platforms, matching platforms, group formation platforms. Essentially, platforms bring together users of different types together to satisfy some need. For instance, search engines bring together content creators and content consumers. If you look at e-commerce marketplaces, they bring together buyers and sellers. Look at ride-sharing apps, they bring together riders, drivers, and so on, right? And this is what's really revolutionized our whole ecosystem. Now, you might be wondering, what has AI got to do this? Well, see, you could have these systems, and the primary value of these systems is minimizing risk, efficient matchmaking, efficient communications, and you can probably make do without AI, but AI really supercharges all of these platforms. So what's happening here is the platforms draw data from their users. AI uses this data to magnify the platform efficiency, and then that brings in more users. Right? So you have a very powerful network effect going on, and there's a huge distribution, and distribution trumps everything, finally. So what's happened in the corporate world is there's this strong cognizance of the criticality of platforms, and there is a big focus on using AI to improve the platform efficiency. And I feel that's something the societal sector, the social sector could benefit from, just this paradigm, right? So this is the number one thing, platforms. The number two thing, I think, is the process of developing AI models. Now, if you consider AI system, what makes them successful is, number one, a deep understanding of the problem requirements. It is not the technology. It is a deep understanding of what needs to be done. Number two, data, then compute, and people to build the solutions. Of course, I'm like pushing away the modeling and the solution away, but these are the 4 critical factors. Now, with the emergence of foundation models, what's happening is this big democratization of AI capabilities. What used to take seasoned ML professionals months to implement can now be done by a domain expert who is a bit tech savvy in days or hours. And I'm not at all exaggerating, and we were just talking, Manu was just talking about some examples. So this is happening all over the place. So this addresses the people aspect to some extent, but we have the other 3 factors: data, compute, and even this figuring out the problem requirements. And here I feel that in the corporate world, there's actually more streamlining and more rigor in the process of how you define the problems, the diligence around the data, the modeling, evaluation, review, safeguards. And this, I feel, is something that's critical for us to take everywhere. And I'm not saying that it's not there yet. It is there, like listening to Amrita and Vishal. Definitely it is there, but we need to do more of it, and it's important to build robust, scalable systems. The third point I want to call out is purpose, or maybe I should call it price because it's the corporate world. So there is a lot more clarity of purpose, right? And that's important. Let me explain why. Because it's not that the purpose is necessarily good. I mean, these are revenue generating companies, but because there is a common purpose, it is easier to align disparate teams. It's easier to objectively evaluate multiple solutions and so on. And that's important because these AI systems have a lot more degrees of freedom. So the objective that you want to optimize needs to be like very well fleshed out, and everybody needs to know what that objective is, whether it is revenue, whether it's something else. So one thing I feel that social sector could also benefit from is more visibility on these North Star metrics. What do we really want to optimize for in healthcare? And it's not an easy question. It's not that easy to arrive at one or two metrics. But having that metrics well defined and socialize will actually help us align efforts, especially because the social sector is spread across multiple orgs. Yeah. So I'll stop here because I took way too long.
No,
Yeah.
sure, sure. Thank you for that very interesting answer, Shrujana. You mentioned about democratization through AI, right? I'd like to come to Dr. Vivek Raghavan. For those who don't know, probably, before Sarvam, he's been associated with some of the biggest projects that Government of India has done, including Aadhaar. So I want to understand from you that, obviously from your experience of working from at Sarvam, as well as projects like Aadhaar, how can we aggregate use cases across various government projects to sort of drive efficiencies of scale? Probably there are few people, of your stature who would understand how difficult it is to get the entire government machinery to come together and work for a common cause.
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me to this event. I think that's one of the things that you see, and I think it's got somewhat to similar to what Srujana was saying about platforms, right? The key point that you need to understand is that there are so many of these projects that need to be done, and they need to be done across the country, and all these use cases are all unique, and everyone is different. But when you go one layer below, there's a lot of commonality that is there between these use cases. And unless you start, instead of thinking of each one of them as being independent, to extract that core commonality and make it available in a form that various people can build on top of it easily, right? Otherwise, we will, I think we'll build over, and the reason why it's becoming more and more important, in fact, most of the use cases that were talked about before, we were actually talking about fairly small models, okay? Most of the models are actually not very, and while if you look at what has happened in the last generative AI, in the last year and a half, is that the size of these models have become significantly, the computational things has become significantly more expensive to even run and stuff like that. And so therefore, unless you create these kinds of ways where there is this aggregation of a certain core capabilities that a number of different use cases can use, you will not be able to do things efficiently. And by default, then what that will mean is that you will go to the existing platforms, which I'm not saying is a good thing or a bad thing, but in the end, that's what's going to end up happening. And we have to build these. And I think we have to. We have to have these things on which we need to be able to do. So one of the things that we are doing at Sarvam, of course, Sarvam is, the goal is to actually build LLMs that are relevant for India and stuff like that. And the goal is to actually do two things, right? One is that to be able to have a place where it's easy to aggregate use cases, easy to do those kinds of things, and actually you can actually provide these kind of small models that understand, small in the LLM world, which is still not so small, but that can understand these kinds of things and allow basically the core components of, of voice, of digitization, of being able to do these at the highest quality and the lowest cost, so that you can actually build a platform that many people can use. For example, we do believe that, in terms of calling, we should be able to actually do calls, and here we are talking about actually bots calling to people in their own language at less than ₹1 a minute. Okay, so therefore, that's something that we think we can achieve by doing this kind. And we are just saying this is our platform, but I'm saying in general, the concept means that there needs to be platforms that do these things.
You spoke about building platforms in Indian languages. I'd like to come to Manu now, I guess, who's probably doing a lot of groundwork and sort of pioneering the kind of work that his organization Karya is doing, where they've partnered with I think companies like Microsoft to build AI bottoms up, which is from the grassroots. I leave it to him to sort of explain how this is happening. My question to him is, how do we make sure that these models, this kind of data that we are collecting, the models that we are building, has sort of a long shelf life, is sort of, I think one of the speakers here at the Jayesh Sanket talked about, privacy issues when it comes to databases. How are you making sure that while we are building this database, and India, as we know, is, one of the largest data markets in the world, we have probably the largest internet users, the largest data block. We are building this database, it's an asset to the world, but we have to make sure that our own, rights are also protected. How are you taking care of this?
Absolutely. So happy to be here. I think very grateful to Meti for setting the stage up, and I think it's been so lovely to hear from everyone on the panel. Karya is the Sanskrit word for work that gives you dignity. That's exactly what we do. We bring dignified digital work to low-income communities across the globe. We are predominantly based here in India. This year we will employ 100,000 people across all 28 states. And we employ people to build high quality speech, image, video, and text data sets. So our workers sit at their homes wherever they are, and they use the Karya Android platform / web platform / desktop platform, and they basically do these micro tasks that lead to these data sets being built, right? We believe very strongly the conversation around ethical AI has to involve a conversation on wages, right? When we say AI, I think a lot of us assume, like if I asked everyone in the audience to think of what an AI engineer or an AI builder looks like, right? We think of maybe someone like us sitting in a swanky building like this, very fancy building or a very fancy office, right? But the world has far more data workers than they have AI engineers, right? We have 5 million plus data workers in the world today. A lot of them in this country, and Karya exists to bring that work to low-income communities ethically. We pay them 20 times the Indian minimum wage and train them to do more and more complex digital tasks, right? So they can do the kind of tasks that you are talking about, right? I think to summarize our experience of 7 years in one sentence, we believe that low-income communities in India are excellent builders of AI and excellent beneficiaries of AI, right? And India is both the AI use case capital, but also the AI building capital for the world. And I think when we employ people to build it, all the precautions that you mentioned need to be taken, right? One is we need to make sure that our data is available to our people, our startups, right? Which is why I think I'm so grateful for the incredible work that Bhashini is doing. Karya, like I think many organizations on this panel contributes to Bhashadan and make sure that we are working with the open source community. The second thing is we operate like a data cooperative. So wherever possible, we create worker-owned data sets. So our workers keep the in-principle ownership of their data, and they get royalties whenever that data is resold and shared with our commercial partners, which I think enables further economic opportunities for our workers, right? And I think fundamentally thinking about this ethically means how do we center our communities in the conversation on AI, right? And how do we make sure that the wages increase, people get value out of it. And of course, it goes without saying that, if you want to build inclusive AI, which I think everyone does, you just need to start by employing the people you want to include, right? So if the AI is gendered, that's because not enough women are involved in the process of building AI. If AI is not being equitable, right? The way to change that is by changing who gets to build the data sets. And I think that aligns beautifully with the government of India's mandate to be equitable and decolonize AI, like the GPI mission so declares. I think that is fundamentally linked to who gets to build AI, and doing that responsibly is very, very critical. Yeah.
Sure. That's very reassuring to hear. India is going to be the AI, not just the sort of consumer, but the builder of AI for the world, paying 20 times the minimum wages, royalties, etc. I'd like to come to Aditi now. Aditi, as JPAL, you've sort of studied a lot of government programs. From your experience, what is it that the government can do to come together and really make a difference when it comes to this entire transformation and the potential that AI has? How can we realize it fully?
Great, thanks for that question. And again, thanks to Maiti, thanks to the organizing team, Bhavya, for getting us for this very, very exciting discussion. And really liked how you started to engage the audience, Surabhi. I did like to also, through this question, introduce a little bit of what we do at JPAL. The Poverty Action Lab, incubated at MIT, not many people would know, has been working for over 2 decades now. Founded in 2003 by our founders Abhijit Banerjee and Esther Duflo, who received the Nobel Prize in 2019 for evangelizing what we today call as the randomized control trial methodology for evaluating programs. So what we do at JPAL with our network of 900 global researchers, 6 regional offices, and our work spanning across 11 sectors, agriculture, education, health, so on and so forth, is that at our core we evaluate things, and we do so by rigorous concurrent evaluations. And through those research evidences that we produce, we inform the government and we provide evidence to policy making and the policy makers to say what works and what does not, and why does it not work for whatever reasons. AI has been, so to speak, the flavor of now over 1.5 years, if I may say so. And everywhere you see AI being touted as the next big thing. We saw very, very few such cases of general application of technology when it started with electricity, then it went to telephone, then it went to smartphones and internet, and now it's AI everywhere. And so what we've been looking at is that a lot of the government work and the use cases around AI have been hinged on the potential of it being able to scale massively. What we have been very squarely holding up a position on looking at how impact at its own can be measured, whether AI or no AI. Right? So we were doing evaluations when AI was still being used 10 years ago, but it wasn't as much of a hype. It wasn't considered to be a silver bullet, if I may say so. But the program, by as such, the efficacy of the program to deliver the outcome, which is the benefit to the beneficiaries, was being evaluated. And I would like to thank Amrita for that presentation, because she talked about the randomized control trials that they have used at Arman to be able to do what they did at the beginning. To come to your question as to what the government can do to leverage this potential, essentially Mighty has started doing a lot of what they are doing through the mission by bringing collaborators into one single room. But there's a very, very sincere need of collaboration and very, very sincere need of bringing the developers, the tech companies, the policymakers, the donors, as well as the evaluators under one roof. And these conversations need to happen around the problem that the AI is trying to solve for, the solutions that are being developed, and the essential evaluation of the outcome that it would really lead to. And we've also seen that many a times in some of these case studies and conversations that we have just had are somewhat of an eye-opener to what I'm trying to say, because each one of them highlighted a little bit of a limitation to the potential that they can reach. Either it was a financial capital potential, or it was a potential to not being able to understand technology at its core, which the tech companies do very well, or it was the ability to connect with the grassroots level, which the social impact organizations do. So you see, each of these categories of collaborators hold a very unique piece and connect to that stakeholder group. And so bringing them together under one roof can only truly unlock or harness the potential for AI for social good, right? Because we are talking about public service delivery. So definitely getting all the collaborators together, making sure that the social impact organizations who are developing these solutions have the capability and the knowledge of the technology, they have the financial and the technical resources. And very importantly, what I also feel is, as Srijana mentioned, that these days AI applications will be produced in days, if not in hours, right? And that's a bit of a scary thought as well. So what are the guardrails and the risks and the mitigation mechanisms that we need to look out for? Together with this community, we also need to be able to create a socio-technical cultural framework of sorts, right? So the government holds the regulatory pieces and the developers hold the development piece. And so we need to be able to build some sort of a framework which makes sure that these developments are happening in the framework of what social context of the problem is, what are the cultural elements that it would really need to take care of, and then what are the technical considerations, whether the data that it has and the data it will source, like you said, security concerns, personalizations concern, privacy concerns, so on and so forth. So a very, very dire need of developing or co-developing a socio-technical framework of development. And this only the government can facilitate, and people like us and my organizations could come in to provide evidence across the globe of what has worked and what has not, to be able to do so.
Sure. Thank you so much, Aditi, for that very interesting answer where you spoke about how a lot of different stakeholders can come together to really make things work and make a difference. Before I open it up for audience questions, I'll just quickly go to Priya from IBM. Priya, from your worldview, what is it that, IBM has been one of the pioneers in the field of AI, with things like Watson, which is now Watson.x, right? What are the best practices that the government could adopt? What have been your learnings? Any key takeaways here?
One of the things I would like to share, and first I'll say it's a great honor to be here, of course. One of the things I'll share is I think enabling seamless compute across hybrid environments, be it different clouds, on-prem, mobile phones, or even other devices, that's going to be a key element of successfully scaling the deployment of AI. And there are really 4 reasons. I think one came up about data privacy, data locality, and even regulations about whether that data is allowed to leave or move around. That dictates, that's one of the requirements that leads to hybrid environments, but there's also just the availability of resources. So we know that generative AI especially is an extremely resource-hungry workload, and just the compute requirements are huge, and they might not be all available in one place. And a third factor is whether you have this infrastructure captive or transient. Do you always need 1,000 GPUs, or do you want to use them on demand? And finally, where you will want to deploy it. Again, we saw various use cases. There could be industry settings, mobile phones, or even cloud environments. So this is going to be key, and the role of platforms has been brought up multiple times. So a platform's job in this case is to bridge between this diverse infrastructure and hardware that might be in different places, and make it available not only in a seamless, easy to consume, but also performant manner. If we look at the challenges of just keeping your thousands of GPUs utilized and still giving you the value you want, they are tremendous. So I want to make it real by sharing one example. And my research team is based in New York, so we partnered with the open science team from NASA. And we trained a geospatial foundation model together. And it's just so happened that the skills and resources happened to be in IBM Cloud in our AI infrastructure. So this model was trained there, but NASA wanted to make it available to the domain experts. So this was earth science data, right? So various temperature and land mass and so on, satellite observations. And so their desire then was to take this model and deploy it on AWS, where they had compute resources. And they ran a workshop with various earth and climate science experts who wanted to then tune this foundation model. And they did it for flood detection, burn, scar detection, and so on. And recently we heard about some colleagues in Africa who used it for detecting locust breeding grounds. So this is also the power of open science and open models that can be used in various environments. And now that the platform has proven to be valuable, they also want to deploy it at scale on their on-prem HPC cluster and make it available there. So I think this is going to be a key element of successfully scaling. Driving the cost down of AI is going to be a key element. And I think on that, one last thing I will say is, everybody is so focused on training these huge large language models right now, but we have to remember that it's the inference that is going to drive the volume. And that's where you're going to deploy and infuse applications with AI. And driving down that cost is what will lead to value creation, return on investment. So that's where a lot of our focus is. How can we make that possible?
Thanks for making that great point where, all the buzz right now is around LLMs, but how we use them to, especially at scale, is something, which will make the real difference. I really also like the point that you made about using resources carefully. So thank you so much for that answer. I'd like to open it up for audience questions now. If anybody has any questions, please identify yourself and also identify the panelists to whom the question is directed to. Yes, please. Ma'am, please. Can somebody please run over with the mic to the lady in the front?
Thanks each of you. Surbi, you're really impressed by your amazing moderation. I'm Professor Charu. I deal with digital transformation in public sector. I teach government officers on various aspects of technology. So hearing startups was definitely an eye-opener. I'm just concerned about green computing and the kind of power guzzling, the kind of carbon emissions that are happening while we are celebrating AI. Yes, I see some happy faces. Please address my concern. Thank you. Any of you would do.
Yeah, maybe I'll jump in because I addressed cost, but I really wanted to also point out energy efficiency. I think we all know, there are many examples of where commitments to, energy efficiency targets are really in jeopardy right now. Because we have committed, by 2030, we would be somewhere and so on. And AI has led to great data center expansion and investment in compute that's going exactly in the opposite direction. So I would say the good news there is cost efficiency, driving costs down is also going to lead and help us in driving the energy efficiency to a better place. I think that's also going to necessitate, innovations in hardware, frankly, both hardware and algorithmic innovations. Hopefully, we'll see the rise of more fit-for-purpose models. Not everybody needs a trillion parameter model for everything that we need to do. So I think if we adopt that mindset, and we actually are already seeing that. I think we heard in the earlier LLM session that perhaps more, not only fit-for-purpose models, but more thought going into where do we apply huge LLMs versus where are there other ways and better ways of doing it. There are agentic systems that are emerging where, if an LLM could call a calculator to add numbers, perhaps that's more efficient than having it calculate, mathematics. So I think all of these things together, but the key thing is for that to become a priority. So if we make it a priority, there will be ways to address it across the spectrum, from hardware to algorithms to better use of AI.
Thank you. Who else had a question? Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. Congratulations, all of you. My name is Gibson. I work for UNICEF. I'm the Chief of Technology and Innovation at UNICEF in India. It's a very exciting times, and thank you so much for the presentation. I have a few questions. I can ask two? Okay. One concern that we have is, so AI, so far, the way we look at it is there's a risk of creating digital divide and enhancing that further, right? We have already challenges with the internet and devices. We have challenges that women can't access connect devices, and there's an imbalance between men and women. And so I don't know how, since you're saying scale, I'm not sure how you factored the digital divide in that narrative. I'd like to hear some ideas around that, because scale for me is scale, right? It's not scale in Delhi, Bangalore, and Mumbai, and not in Patna, and where we have those challenges, for example. That is one question I have. I think Ms. Srijana from Amazon, she talked about platforms. That was very exciting. But what I'm not sure is the business models or how are you going to deploy this solution? In UNICEF, and where we are a founder of DPGA, it is, as you know, we are very keen on, and India as a government is very keen on developing DPGAs. Why? If we are scaling, these solutions are not meant, I suppose you want to share them outside of India. And so if you want to share this out of India, the pathway then that we see is DPGAs. And I think this is something which has come up. So the platforms that you are discussing, I'm assuming this will be independent platforms. It is very important. So then you can have access globally. And if we are to address the SDGs, then these good solutions need to be deployed, shareable across the globe. And I know India is very keen on that. So when we talk about platforms, I hope not the business platforms per se, but these are independent platforms. So that the entry barrier can be low, and then more countries can benefit. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I will also hand to Manu in a bit. So thanks so much for the question. And the point of mentioning platforms was to say that, you know, we need these platforms in the social sector available across globe. And I think Manu has some great examples of what they're doing with Karya, especially in Africa. You want to take it? Yeah.
Oh, of course. I think point very well on platforms, and I think making sure these platforms are DPGs is extremely critical to scale, right? I think one thing we are doing, we expanded to Kenya last month, Ethiopia this month, Ghana, Senegal, Tanzania later this year. And as we do these expansions, it's via our platforms, right? So we're basically onboarding incredible organizations in these countries, on the platform. We provide 6 weeks of training, and that's it. And in these organizations, we've in fact built this no-code interface where they can just go on the platform and in their local language, let's say in Amharic in Ethiopia, they can say, design a Karya app for me where workers are shown an image. All my images are in this Google Drive folder or this OneDrive folder. Once I have the images, I want the workers to record like their response to that image. I want to build a speech data set. Whatever the recordings is, put it in this folder, like validate it. Whenever it's all done, just send me a ping on my email. And that's it. And you can just give that natural language command. And AI today is so good that that's not at all a hard thing. And within a few microseconds, it creates the APK, it creates the login, and you're all set to go, right? So our partners, some of whom don't have technical teams, doesn't matter. We're working with worker unions, with local nonprofits, and they're able to scale this, and that's fantastic, right? And the platform will become like a DPG, right? And I think this is just one of, I can think of 1,000 examples of, what the nonprofit ecosystem in the country is doing around making sure that these platforms scale globally. On your former point, I think, it's a great point you made that, it's been 30 years since the internet was created, and even today, 2.9 billion people in the world have no access to the internet. So imagine if 30 years from now, we're in the global India AI Summit 20 whatever, and we are basically saying, oh, AI changed your life and my life, but 2.9 billion people still have no access to AI. And that would certainly deepen the digital divide that already exists. I think the solution to that is the work that people on the stage do, the work that Rocket Learning does, the work that Arman does, to make sure that we are bringing these cutting-edge AI solutions to people everywhere, not just people in our cities, but really understanding the dialects of the people. I think it would be fantastic if we could hear from Vivek on this, because Sarvam also focuses on dialectal diversity and making sure our languages are understood.
No, I think the question of, and I want to take an optimistic view and not, is that one of the things is the digital divide is real, and we have to actually work to bridge it. But the fact is that it is potentially, if the intent is there, it's potentially easier to bridge the divide today than it has ever been before. So, and I think that if that intent is there, and I think that I hope there is enough people in the world who have that intent to actually the ability to be able to teach every child in the world, or the ability to give everybody good health care. This is something that was, I think, the capacity to do that in the world of AI is certainly much more than it was ever before. Having said that, how do we ensure access? And that's really, you have to really look at what are the reasons why somebody doesn't have access. Language may be one, but there may be many, many other reasons why somebody does not have access. And to really go and look at those reasons and cut them down, it has to be a very conscious effort. But I think the same technology gives us the ability to actually bridge this at a cost which was actually much lower than it ever would have been before.
Can I just add that just on the point of your scaling point, which is it a scale or is it a gender conscious scale? Because that is also something that you asked for, that, so that's where is also the whole cautious scaling of the applications and making sure that we are looking at indicators of progress in a very calibrated way and a benchmark way, which is where also this whole framework of evaluation and also making sure that we are putting together the outputs and the outcomes that we want to reach to in a much more forward and a foresight way, rather than sort of scaling mindlessly and looking at what it may bring to us later. So just want to also address that point, which is it just scale or is it a conscious scale that we are looking at? Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to briefly touch upon your first question on the digital divide, which I think is interesting because even as Vivek pointed out, there are various dimensions to this. Certainly there is a digital divide, and in fact, one of the things that we do in nearly all of our projects is make sure that, whenever we develop AI, that it's deployed on an edge device, that you do not need internet connectivity and so on. But that doesn't really solve the digital divide problem, it just addresses it. But there are ways in which AI can be used to, in fact, solve the digital divide problem, at least to a certain extent. So with large language models, for example, and the improvements in speech technologies, people don't need to be able to digitize things on their own. They can just speak, and you can have bots that listen to them speak and create structured digitized data sets from that. That's one example. Second is from our own work, one of the things we do is human anthropometry, baby anthropometry measurement in the field, where we are actually using AI to automatically digitize infant measurements like their weight, their height and their chest circumference and so on. We just take a short video of the baby and the AI infers the weight of the baby, and this is automatically digitized and fairly accurate, and it's stored in the backend. So AI can enable digitization like this in many ways.
At a 1 minute level, I just want to say that I think we have to move the conversation from digital divide to AI divide, right? I think digital divide is something that might be of the past, but the AI divide, if AI was to be employed the way that we are doing it right now through ChatGPT, to type modalities, right? Or even through paid access, right? There will definitely be an AI divide in 10 years, right? If not a digital divide. So maybe the conversation needs to shift also to AI divides, which is how many of those that have a smartphone are benefiting from the AI, right? Most of these people are actually suffering. The people who suffer most from AI are those who are getting their job replaced, right? They're the ones also not benefiting from the AI. So we should look to be inclusive in that way, that they're the ones also being benefited.
Thank you, Vishal, and thank you to all of you, all the panelists, for a very amazing conversation. I think the sheer breadth of...
Can we have a last question?
I'm sorry, we've really run out of time, but the panelists are here, so you can please take it offline. My apologies, we'll have to really wrap up the session now. Just wanted to thank all of you for being so patient, all the panelists for the amazing views, and I think what Vishal said has left us with some food for thought, that while we're talking about the digital divide, the AI divide is something that we really need to ponder upon, and how we can make it more inclusive, more development, and AI for all. Thank you so much. Have a great day ahead.
Thank you, everyone. I'd like to take just a minute to felicitate all the dignitaries on stage. So at first, we'll have Mr. Sudhir Reddy from MIT felicitate the moderator, Ms. Surbhi Agarwal, editor, Economic Times. Round of applause. Thank you. Ms. Agarwal, I'd request you to stay on stage and felicitate each speaker one by one. So at first, we have Dr. Alpan Raval, who's the Chief ML Scientist at Vadvani AI. Next up, we have Mr. Vishal Sunil, Chief Technology Officer at Rocket Learning. Next, we have Ms. Amrita Mahale, who's the Head of Product at Arman. Next, we have Dr. Vivek Raghavan, who's the co-founder of Sarvam AI. Next, we have Ms. Shujana Meruku, who's Principal Scientist at Amazon. Mr. Manu Karya, who's the CEO, Mr. Manu Chopra, who's the CEO of Karya. Apologies. Ms. Priyanka Nagpurkar, who's the Vice President of Cloud at IBM Research. And lastly, we have Ms. Aditi Namdeo, who's the Director of Strategic Initiatives at JPAL. Thank you so much for attending, everyone. If you have any further questions, please ask the panelists offline.